The objective: to deliver the NBA to you like no other. News, play breakdowns, power rankings, storylines you never hear talked about anywhere else. It's all straight shots here, fired by straight shooters. S and Gunn. This is the Objective Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Objective Basketball Podcast. That's Baraheni here. Lauren Gunn joining me. We just got past a weekend that was filled with basketball a little bit, but mostly football because it was Super Bowl weekend. Lauren, did you get a chance to watch the game? Are you even a partaker in Super Bowl events or no?
Normally I am, and I did tune in for the Rihanna show. So I did tune in. I had to see that, but I did not watch. I kept tabs on the score, but I did not watch the game. I don't know that I had a whole lot of stake in Chiefs Eagles, but I was glad it was a good game. Rihanna looked great, so it was I guess a successful Super Bowl for me.
I'm assuming you are a proud Cowboys fan.
Proud is a strong word. I don't know that I'd say proud, but I am unfortunately a Cowboys fan.
Right.
But not
what
at all
would be
proud about that.
what do you think would be the NBA comparison for the franchise that is the Cowboys? Would it be the Knicks
Lakers?
Or the Lakers? Would it be the Lakers?
Well, no. Well, to me, it's the Lakers in terms of how there's so much brand. The brand is so strong. There's fans everywhere. They always have a chance at whatever guys. But in
one
terms
of the most
them always
highly
choking,
valued franchises.
yeah,
obviously.
Exactly. But in terms of the Cowboys choking, I don't think you can necessarily compare them to the Lakers there. So I don't want to say that the Knicks always choke either, but I kind of see where you were going with that. So I could go. You could go Knicks. I would go Knicks. That makes sense.
They to me feel like, and this is just more of a Toronto thing, but the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you know what I mean? A lot of people would draw that comparison of a storied franchise. But anyways, we're getting off track here. Super Bowl was awesome. The game itself was pretty great. I'm a Chiefs fan, but my Chiefs fandom is very casual, very, very casual. It's just an appreciation for Patrick Mahomes. And he did what he had to. It was amazing. On one ankle, ladies and gentlemen. That was crazy. I'm just gonna bring that up. One ankle. That's it. He was limping. And he got the dub. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. But yes, Rihanna was awesome. That was a great Super Bowl halftime show. I thought it was up there. I was in my living room. I was going off. I'm not gonna lie.
Were you going off? I love it.
I was going off. Yes.
Honestly, it was just banger after banger, and it's one of those things and that's kind of how the Super Bowl always is. But when they're going through their entire discography, you're just like, damn. Yeah. And so I had that moment with Rihanna, and you gotta love her. You gotta love her.
You know what she was doing? She was reminding everybody. That's what she was doing. She went through every single chorus she had ever sang in her life and just reminded everybody how fire. The songs are just chef's kiss, ladies and gentlemen.
You gotta love her.
All right, cool. On to the NBA stuff. It was not an entirely busy weekend after the trade deadline, but there was some news. There were some lingering things that happened after the trade deadline that we should discuss. The Gary Payton II trade with James Wiseman and Sadiq Bey and $1 million second-round picks involved, that was kind of in jeopardy of being tossed out. The main reason was because the Blazers didn't. I guess there's been different wording on this. There's been different reports too, so it sort of feels like the Blazers and Warriors are taking shots back at each other, but there hasn't been a lot of clarity in terms of what actually happened. But apparently, the Blazers ended up, kind of not or withholding the information, I guess, of Gary Payton II's injury. And apparently the Toradol shots, I don't know what kind of shot that is, but I guess it's the same thing Patrick Mahomes got in his ankle at halftime. Sorry, just had to make sure to throw that in there. But yes, so that was the kind of confusion there. They're also investigating, and kind of the Warriors have launched an investigation. They've asked the NBA to launch an investigation on the Blazers, maybe withholding information in previous trades. Apparently the Larry Nance and CJ McCollum trade is one that they're trying to look into. But we'll see how that goes. That's probably an ongoing story. The main crux of this is that the trade is now going down. After 48 hours of deliberation and arguments and whatnot, I'm assuming this trade is official, all good to go. I guess that's it. That's the housekeeping of it all. Do you feel like that is fair? Do you think that's something that should have happened? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really weird kind of situation because obviously the Gary Payton II, it was with him and it was the Warriors getting him, but it all hindered upon whether like the Warriors could just completely throw out this trade. And so I thought it was very fascinating that we're seeing something like this unfold in a multi-team trade as opposed to a just one-to-one trade. So I was really curious about how the NBA was going to handle all of that. And like you said, the ongoing story with maybe even previous trades, maybe even others. I haven't heard of any other situations beyond the Larry Nance one, but even more that might potentially kind of unfold or come out in all of this as all of this unfolds. So it's kind of a really interesting, another different thing that I think we're seeing in the NBA. But I mean, the whole time that this was going through, I was like, what, are they just going to send all these players back? I guess that's on the table. They're saying that that's on the table. But can you imagine if all those players go back? And I was thinking primarily with Sadiq Bey going back to Detroit after hearing his name out there all trade deadline. Yeah. James Wiseman going back to Golden State, like, And so it was really hard for me to
even the Gary Payton situation. Yeah, because there was a quote that said like he was ecstatic to get out of Portland. He was like,
that's right. That's right.
He was so happy. He
was ready to go. Or it just everything about it. I was like, surely this will go through, but also if it doesn't, like it's going to be really interesting. I don't think that we've ever seen anything like that, or at least that I can pull from memory and recent memory. So it was a little crazy, but. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels like it's not over. Like it's over. No. The trade is complete. It's official per Woj I believe it was last night or yesterday, at some point yesterday. But this whole thing, it seems like we're going to learn a lot more here.
Yeah, and I think the way to go about this probably would have been just to let the trade process, which they did, and then launch an investigation. And maybe there's some extra compensation that happens, or a fine, or picks, or whatever that happens.
That makes sense.
Another fallout from the trade deadline stuff is the buyout market, which is what everybody is going to be talking about for the next week or so before the All-Star weekend, is where are these guys who are going to get bought out going to fall? We've already had a couple of guys go to different places. Reggie Jackson going to the Denver Nuggets. And then we have Terrence Ross going to the Phoenix Suns. Although it was close. It was pretty close that Terrence Ross was ending up with you guys.
I know. I know. I was not happy. I sent a whole tweet out about it. Mavs Twitter, I think, was excited about it. I mean, it was like, Woj was the one that said we were the front runner. And so I was like, what was funny is that the day that got announced was the day that I was going to the Bruce Springsteen concert with my brother, and I was with my dad.
Hell yeah.
We're there talking Mavs, that's just what we do. And my brother looks at me and he goes, who's going to snipe Terrence Ross away from us? And I go, I don't know, but it's going to be actually, I think I said, I don't know, Celtics. And I was like, somebody's going to do it though. Cause we never get anybody on the buyout market. We just the buyout don't.
Market guy.
And this was like the most optimism I had, having someone like Kyrie to pair with Luka. I was like, if they're going to get anyone on the buyout market, it's now. And I still think that they will, cause to me, they have to. But, to see it go from, front runners to all of a sudden, actually, psych, you're not, that was pretty disappointing, but also nothing new in Mavs fandom. Really nothing new. So I just was like, good God.
We'll get to a little bit more of the Mavs fandom stuff in a second. But I think the Terrence Ross fit in Phoenix is interesting. I'm skeptical that he gets a lot of minutes. I think this is a guy, he's a shooter. He's a streaky shooter at that. And he's a very, very subpar defender. Maybe one of the worst defenders in the NBA. And I think that's not a great recipe for the way the Suns want to play. I think there's better shooters on the team between Landry Shamet, between Damian Lee. I think they're definitely ahead on the pecking order. This is maybe more of an insurance aspect to be like, okay, if Lee isn't shooting the ball well, if Shamet isn't shooting the ball well, maybe if we don't have the answer that given night, okay, maybe we'll throw Terrence Ross in there.
Right.
And, with these like Josh Okogie and Torrey Craig are kind of like PJ Tucker-esque players, right?
Right.
They're like these smaller, kind of compact forwards that can do the big man things and kind of hustle. There's another guy we're going to talk about in a second, in Jared Vanderbilt, but they're in that similar vein of player, utility knife type guys. I think adding shooters next to those guys to do dribble handoffs, to kind of get things in motion that way. Terrence Ross is a great movement shooter. That's probably his main skill. I think that type of stuff makes sense for Phoenix, especially with the way they like to kind of run this motion offense.
Right.
I will say, like, it's not that big of a deal. As much as I talk about Terrence Ross and Phoenix, these buyout guys, 99% of the time, buyout guys do not matter. We foam over. We love it every single time. We're like, oh my God, these buyout guys might change the league. It never happens, ladies and gentlemen. It's rare, very, very rare. There is one chance that these next two buyout guys that got signed might make a little bit of noise in the playoffs. Reggie Jackson, Denver Nuggets, which is also like, why didn't you just do the trade? You know, Jackson and Jackson for Bones Highland, and then 2 second-round picks going the other way. Maybe it was a tax issue. Maybe it was a money issue.
Yeah, I
think
it would have been a money issue. Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably the reason. But I guess, like, whatever. That doesn't matter. Either way, Reggie Jackson ending up on the Denver Nuggets. He's going to be their backup point guard. I think he provides some of the same stuff that Bones does in terms of being an offensive-minded guard, a guy who's going to look for his shot. He's going to try to score first. And I think they have some of the same things, same qualities about them, good or bad, to be honest with you. I think the chucking, right? Do you think that's a good – it's part of it.
I like that you put it that way, the chucking.
Yeah. Hey, look, I mean, you got to
call it like
team.
You see it. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going with this. I like the pickup. I think it was a good pickup for Denver, especially when you talk about, like you said, replacing something that you just lost. I had questions kind of before the trade deadline. It became apparent that they were going to move Bones, but in the event that they had kept Bones, and you're trying to like look ahead, if you're a Nuggets fan or even just watching Denver, you kind of have questions about, okay, well, Bones can come in and light it up, but he's still young. Like, can we rely on him in a playoff setting when the rotation shrinks? What does that look like? But Reggie Jackson, while there are similarities, like you said, with the chucking, the Nuggets can rely on Reggie Jackson. He's got the playoff experience. They don't need him to be the guy on the bench that just explodes offensively, but they can rely him to get in there, get the ball moving, potentially get going. Because, I mean, as from all the Mavs Clippers series, I've seen Reggie Jackson get going, and it's sometimes you just can't stop it. So, or maybe just the Mavs can't stop it. So, I do think Reggie was a good fit, good pickup, especially in the buyout market, because the Nuggets went out, they got their backup big. We kind of discussed the fit on our trade deadline kind of reaction and breakdown. Yeah, all of that. So, I think kind of coming in again and filling the gap with Reggie was a good pickup. As good as you could ask for in the buyout market.
Yeah. Again, for a buyout market guy, that's a pretty big swing. And compared to, like, if we're looking at what the Nuggets have done at this trade deadline, including the Jackson signing and trading Bones, they essentially added Thomas Bryant. They added Reggie Jackson. And I think adding those two guys who, like you said, are rotation pieces, guys that can probably throw into a playoff rotation and see what happens. I do still have questions defensively, and the Bryant situation, he's not a good defender, and Jackson, who isn't very good at defense either, that still doesn't really solve my problem when it comes to the Nuggets. It doesn't assure me a little bit more that they've found that out. I would have loved for them to be just a little bit more aggressive in getting that wing defender. I'm shocked that they didn't try and go and get one of the wing defenders from the Clippers in that Bones Highland deal. I don't know who it would have been, but just an extra guy, just one more body to throw out there. You mentioned Robert Covington on the trade deadline show. I think that would have been an awesome pickup. Just one more wing guy that they can kind of throw into their lineups that can be a defender for them. That was something that I was looking for them to do. They didn't address that. Either way, they kind of doubled down on their offense, though, because Bryant is a good player. He's kind of like this stretch five type who can shoot the rock. He can kind of create his own offense as well. Same thing with Reggie Jackson, who can shoot. And also, you mentioned it, but Reggie is a playoff performer, man.
Yeah,
like his numbers really do change in the playoffs. Obviously, it's a bit different, but the man goes from like 10 points a game, which is what he's been averaging for the last 3 years in Los Angeles, to 17. He becomes a legitimate playoff performer. So I wonder if that ends up happening here in Denver. We'll see what happens. Another guy, Danny Green, ends up going back home to where he started his career as a rookie. He's going to be a Cleveland Cavalier. Pretty cool story. I'm not sure how much more Danny has left in the tank, but in terms of being a veteran presence, in terms of being just another stretch, a shooter for them to kind of throw out there, I think he makes sense with that core. I don't know if a lot of people have been mentioning that, like, hey, he might be that fifth starter for them because they're looking for that wing player. I don't know if Danny Green in 2019 with the Raptors could do that. Danny Green in 2020 with the Lakers could probably do that. Danny Green in 2023 after an ACL tear or MCL tear, I don't know, his knee, either way, at an age like that, the knee is not going to be a good thing to deal with. I just don't know if the dude is going to be able to do it. And I love Danny. Danny is one of my favorite players all time. So I don't know, but it's an interesting thing to see. We'll see how that looks.
Yeah, and it was an ACL. I fact checked you while you were
Nice.
going, but
Cool.
I don't see him starting there. It's really hard for me to envision that. But I think what you said in terms of being a veteran locker room presence, I think they're ready to hit the ground running in the playoffs. Who knows how far they'll go, what it will look like. But I think they're really ready to just see what they can do. And having a guy like Danny Green, who, like you mentioned, his time with the Raptors, even his time with the Lakers, and even his time with the Spurs, like he has all that experience and just leadership to offer, and kind of even in the moments when maybe you've got, because in Cleveland, like, even though they're performing well, you still have a new group. So there's going to be pressure come playoff time of, oh, does this work? Even though it is still so early and they look just fine, they're going to be just fine. And so having kind of that calming presence cannot go undervalued. And so I like the Danny Green pickup. Personally, I don't really have any expectations in terms of him. And I'm not saying he won't play at all, but in terms of consistency, production, I kind of setting my expectations low there, but I do think the intangibles, kind of what Theo Pinson has done for the Mavs in terms of, if any Mavs people are listening, not familiar with how this goes, but I think Danny Green is a good pickup in that regard.
Hey, Theo Pinson, shout out to him though, because I watched the last two games because obviously I'm very glued in, and I'm ready to see how this Kyrie fit looks, and I'm excited. The Kings game and whatnot, both Kings games. I watched both Kings games, and I'm just like, wow, he's more than just the bench celebrating guy. Yeah, the guy that made them change the rules.
It's a newer thing. It's a newer thing, him having, because that for a little while there, it was like, oh, he'll get spot minutes if somebody gets in foul trouble, whatever the case may be. But for a little while, he was the bench guy, keep the glue guy. And so now seeing him get in there, and I mean, the dude plays hard. That's why they picked him up on that 10-day way back when. And that's why he ultimately, one of the reasons he got signed is because he plays hard. And so seeing him get his opportunity out there, and some nights the threes are going in, some nights there's not a whole lot of offense going on, but the dude will play hard, and that's enough for Jason Kidd to rely on.
Yeah, and they love him. Like he seems like a big teammate guy. I will say, so we're talking about the Cavs, we're talking about the Mavericks. I'm looking at strength of schedule. Okay.
Yes.
The 5 easiest schedules the rest of the way. We're almost at All-Star break, ladies and gentlemen, which means there's about 25 games, give or take, for almost every single team. The easiest schedule is going to be the New Orleans Pelicans. And I wanted to bring this up because we did get the update over the weekend that Zion Williamson will be missing multiple weeks after the All-Star break as well, because he re-aggravated that hamstring injury. I've talked about it at length. I wrote about it. Zion was genuinely, he was everything people imagined he would be when he was healthy this season. And pretty much every season he's been healthy. Like, he has looked exactly like what people expected. A dominant paint presence. He looked ever more like a superstar. He's kind of getting a little bit better at the playmaking side of things. An insane rebounder, great athlete, just an unstoppable force, genuinely. Obviously, the health stuff is concerning. It's something that it will forever be a part of Zion's journey, I feel. And I don't think, at this point, with the re-aggravations, the getting hurt and figuring it out thing, I think that's just going to be a part of what happens with Zion. I think the way the Pelicans will find how the Pelicans are able to maximize Zion and be like, okay, we're only going to play you for 50 to 60 games out of the year, maybe less. Yeah, let's say 50 to 60 games out of the year, and we just have to get you ready for the playoffs. And look, I mean, we're in the day and age of load management. We're in the day and age of player empowerment, and I think it's more acceptable in this current NBA to have a scheme for a player like that, so they don't end up being a Greg Oden, so they don't end up being a Brandon Roy, right? Where it's like their careers have to be completely shelved because of their injuries. Whereas with Zion, and you sort of see it with Kawhi, although he's older, it's like, okay, let's see how we can manage this thing so you can play a few more seasons or multiple seasons. And I think Zion can have a long career that way. Yeah. It's just that they have to manage the playing time, the games played per season, and just like the overall the load on him. I think that's an important aspect going forward. I will say though, Pelicans are in a precarious position. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, because they're kind of hovering in that play-in territory. Obviously, the middle of the West is crazy. Some teams have made upgrades. The Pelicans didn't necessarily make that upgrade. They got Josh Richardson, which maybe he'll be a rotation guy, but nothing substantial. Do you think that they can survive an extended period post All-Star break? We're talking like maybe, I would say he's probably gone for all of March.
Yeah.
That's probably my estimation. So he comes back first week April. Where are the Pelicans at that point? What do you think? They also, just keep in mind, I did say that they have the easiest schedule in the league coming forward. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought that back up, because that is definitely a big part of all of this. I mean, I think that they will be in play-in territory. Part of it because of the remaining schedule. Part of it, I mean, we don't quite know how long he'll be out yet. And then again, just looking at the teams that are below, I think some of those teams will take steps back, but we talked about the Lakers, who we think are going to take steps forward. And so I think that they're going to be right in the play-in range, but I think it's going to be a little dicey for them. And that's assuming that Brandon Ingram, and everybody else is fully healthy, ready to go to kind of carry them, and just, I guess, survive until Zion gets back. So, I am concerned about the Pelicans. To be quite honest, I don't know that I have a whole lot of confidence that they are going to survive enough to make it to the postseason. I hope that they do, because I thought that they were a really fun team, but I like what you said about how to manage all of this. And it will be interesting, because Zion is still so early on in his career that they can say, okay, we have enough of a sample size to determine that, okay, we need to either load manage or do XYZ to, like you said, prevent a Brandon Roy, a Greg Oden situation. And so I'll be interested to see how they do that. And then I think another part of it is the fact that there's still such a young core. This isn't like I hate to say it, but like a Toronto that got Scotty Barnes that has like, I'm so sorry, but no, it was the first thing. Though.
It's funny. It's funny. Masai Ujiri threw out his press conference recently. He was just like, this is a young team. And everybody's like, this isn't a young team. Siakam and Van Vliet are almost 30 years old. Sorry, go ahead. You're good.
No, yeah, but that's kind of my point, is that the Pelicans, they are a pretty young group, and even though they do have some guys that have been in the league for a little while, those guys, while they are parts of the quote unquote core, they can ride their time out or even move on if they have to, but their young core is on the same timeline, and they can kind of retool a little bit. And when I say retool, I don't mean move off Trey Murphy or Herb Jones, anything like that, but they can bring in guys to help kind of address the time when Zion could be out in a load management kind of situation, if that's their approach starting from day one next season, or whatever the case may be. And for the Pelicans, I don't think that they will be looking to next season at all, but I do have a lot of concern about them moving forward, missing Zion for yet another extended period of time.
Right. And yeah, I mean, to your point about what they're going to do moving forward, the shifting pieces, I think consolidation is probably something that they're looking forward to.
Yeah.
I honestly think, especially with the Lakers making moves, and the Lakers made moves early. trading Rui, getting D'Angelo Russell. Those were like earlier on in the week. So I'm surprised that the Pelicans didn't end up moving the Lakers pick this year, because I assume the Lakers will be in play-in territory. And at the very least, they're going to be in that play-in spot. They're probably going to – I think the Lakers probably end up in a playoff spot. Maybe they're the 7 or 8. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But a lot of things have to go right for that to happen, by the way. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is, like, they had a move to make some – they had the chance to make something pretty substantial happen this season with a little bit of a move if they had moved the Lakers pick plus maybe one of their prospects that they're not in love with, like a Jackson Hayes or a Najee Mark.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly.
You know what I mean? If they were to move one of those guys, they could have maybe added something substantial to that. We'll see what happens. They're taking the patient approach. That is completely fine to do, especially with the young core that they have. But losing Zion will hurt a lot. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, think you know what way it's going to go. Make your bet at Sports Interaction. Whatever your sport, Sports Interaction has you covered. Pre-game live betting on all major sports and prop bets. Want to bet? Head to Sports Interaction /SDP. Sorry, I messed that up. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Okay, let's talk about some of the trades that went down. And although actually, do you want to touch on some of the other potential buyout guys that are happening? The Russells, the John Walls, and Pat Beps.
Yeah,
and
let's take a look at that.
Sure. I guess the question I'll have with you is, do you think Russ, and this is maybe a conversation about Russ in general, but do you think at this point he can be a contributor to any type of team? Or, like, you know what I mean? Do you think he still has any juice left in him?
Personally, yeah, I do. I think that the fit and based on what the team is going for, to me, that is going to determine his availability, what he ends up doing. But I absolutely think Russ has juice left in the tank. But I will say, I don't think if you're a contending, or if you're any contending team or a team looking to add talent, I don't think that you should just necessarily go all in on Russ. Like, for example, and to always bring it back to Dallas, I've seen some people be like, oh, go get that third point guard or whatever. No, I don't like that fit with Dallas. But with a team like Miami, or a team that needs to go out and try and run and gun or add a little bit of depth in the point guard position, I do think that there are good fits out there, whether it be quote unquote retooling teams, younger teams that need his experience and his, I guess, leadership as a teammate, or teams that are trying to be competitive. I absolutely think he has juice left and something to offer to any of those teams. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think the best situation for Russ is on a team that is middling right now, that is struggling to get to a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And that, like, just need that extra bit of boost to get there. I don't think the Los Angeles Clippers make a lot of sense. Just either. Because I think they have bones, right? Which I think will play a factor in the shot making that they've added. They've added Eric Gordon, who is another shot creator, shot maker off the bench. I feel like adding Russ would be like too many cooks in the kitchen off the bench. It's just like a lot of stuff. You don't necessarily need it. I think the more I've thought about it, I think I'm coming around to the fact that Chicago makes the most sense. They clearly are trying to win. There's an obvious connection there between Billy Donovan and Russell Westbrook. And I think maybe in that situation with Levine and DeRozan, maybe adding an extra cook might help a little bit.
I like
just
that.
Because it's just, hey, let's add some talent. Let's refine some talent. And Russell Westbrook obviously still has a little bit of juice in him. I think he was better this season. He wasn't good, but he was better this season for the Lakers. I don't know. I think, honestly, the conversation around Russell Westbrook has become exhausting.
It is.
Because there is always some kind of conversation around a guy like that. But I think at the same time, it's kind of overcorrected. It's went way too far. Maybe when we were talking about him as a perennial, all-star and MVP and whatnot, maybe that conversation went too far. Maybe we overvalued the triple-double stuff. And now it's going completely in the opposite direction. And I don't think that's fair to the type of talent that he was. I think people are underestimating just how good he looked in OKC with Durant. That was one of the most unstoppable duos in the NBA, maybe arguably in NBA history when it's all said and done. I think genuinely there's a spot for him in Chicago, even at this age, to kind of figure things out. I would bet the Bulls are the pick that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers are like hungry for more.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And that's the thing that sometimes I think, at least sometimes I'll see things on Twitter that I'm like, people are just missing. They're just missing that little detail of sometimes maybe it doesn't make the most sense, or maybe there's a better fit elsewhere. But for some teams, the hunger from the front office to, whether it's a star, a big name, a star, whatever the case may be, a young guy, they have to go for it and they can't resist. And so I like the Bulls. I think it's a really intriguing fit. I'm kind of with you. I'm not super keen on the Clippers, but I would not be surprised if that ultimately ended up happening. I'm kind of hoping that we do get some sort of like buzz of a wild card team coming in there and being like, you know what? We think we're going to take this gamble. And when I say that, I kind of hope it's a younger team, just because I think that is the best redemption story for Russ, to get in there, to have all these young guys looking up to him, to learn from him, to work with him, to continue to praise him, the coach praise him. I would really, really love to see that become the narrative, but I do think at this stage in his career, especially as a buyout guy, I think something more like the Bulls, Miami, even the Clippers, even the Knicks, maybe. Shoot, I personally, I think that'd be a terrible move for the Knicks, but I would not be surprised if the Knicks did that at all, just because they've been linked to him before. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I definitely think he is going to get picked up, and I'm excited to see where he ends up.
Right. Yeah, it'd be funny if he moved across the hall. That would be very, very interesting. A lot of drama in Los Angeles that way. A lot of vampires apparently too. Yeah, we'll see. Russ is obviously the big dog in the buyout market, but there's John Wall, there's Pat Bev. We'll see what those other guards kind of shift and move over. I'm assuming Russ will be the first domino to go ahead and sign on, and then those other guys will fill in the spots that maybe weren't there. So if Chicago's looking for a point guard and they get Russ, maybe the Clippers end up picking up, Pat Bev. I don't know, but we'll see what happens there, ladies and gentlemen. Should be very, very interesting. I wanted to talk to you, Lauren, about something that went down in terms of the trades that we're talking about. You know, obviously trade deadline was massive. Everybody talks about the Durant, and we're probably a few weeks away from actually seeing Durant in person with Booker and whatnot. So it'll take a while for us to get the observations of what the Phoenix Suns, the new look Phoenix Suns look like. But there are some teams that have already thrown out their players, their big trade swings. And there are some observations. I'm curious to know your thoughts, because obviously the Mavericks situation with Kyrie Irving is the first one that comes to mind. And I think he's looked great, but the team also looks pretty good. So
yeah, the Mavs do look good. I mean, the Kyrie fit, I had my questions about it, but the first game against the Clippers, I keep wanting to jump to the Kings, but his first game against the Clippers was kind of eye-popping, and I tweeted out that I was shocked because the Mavs were playing with pace, they were getting out in transition, and they were running an offense. There was movement, and I was not used to that. And so, when you have guys like Reggie, who always tends to hit his stride in the second half of the season, starts really knocking down those open threes. Josh Green, who's improved from three. When you have those guys and you're playing with movement with a guy like Kyrie, and that draws all the attention, it's not similar to Luka, because they're playing at two completely different speeds, which I think when you have both of those guys out on the floor is only going to make it more difficult to kind of predict. I should say both of them, when you have them out on the floor together more consistently. But I did like what I saw from Kyrie. I liked how he was interacting with the coaches, the teammates. It looked good. And so I tweeted out before their very first game, I was really intrigued to see Josh Green potentially get in the starting lineup and play with Kyrie in transition. And he looked great. And so I think having Kyrie is going to do wonders for a lot of people's games. Christian Wood is another example. And I think even Tim Hardaway Jr. could potentially benefit from it because he's gotten out in transition at some points during the season. And he's shown that he can do it, but it's just not that consistent because that's not the way the Mavs play. But you insert Kyrie and maybe things change a little bit. So I'm really interested as the sample size grows to see what Kyrie looks like. But being able to rely on him, even the last game against the Kings, even though they lost, I'm not even really going to get into how bad they lost that one at the end there, but that's another conversation.
It was a good game, though.
It was a good game, but I just was like, what are we doing? Please draw something up. Please draw something up. But again, another conversation. But Kyrie being able to just take a sidestep and then just chuck up a three and it just splash. Dallas being able to have something like that. And yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie showed that a couple of times, but it was never something that you were like, oh yeah, the second it goes up, it's probably going in. Or like there's a decent shot that's going in. You didn't always have that confidence, but when Kyrie's shooting that ball, I think you can have that confidence. And so it was good to see that from Luka, to see Luka experiencing that, the rest of the team. So I like it. I like it so far. We'll see what happens, but yeah, they look good.
I think, to your point, that'll be a bit of an adjustment for Luka too, because he hasn't been used to playing with a shot maker like Kyrie. And there was that quote afterwards that he said like, "Oh, I should have passed it to Kai in that moment." Yeah, I probably should have passed it to Kai. To your point about pace, which is 100% true, the Mavericks are 27th in the NBA in pace. So they do not. And look, a lot of that is a product of the probing, manipulative style that Luka Doncic likes to play. He is constantly hunting for mismatches, hunting for an advantage. So that, in and of itself is a slow grind. And that's how he wins, right? He's kind of like this big bruising post player as well, so he likes to work from there. A lot of that doesn't require a ton of running, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I think one dynamic, and you touched on it 100%, is Kyrie adds fluidity and pace to this team. He gets guys going. He gets them out and running. And a guy that helps most importantly is Josh Green. I am writing a newsletter about the man right now as we speak this morning. I'm writing about your guy, Josh Green. Even before Kyrie came, though, he was balling out. Just to kind of throw out the stat lines for his last couple of games. Obviously in Sacramento, that loss that they had, 23-5. The win, he had 17-4-7, and then against the Clippers, 14-5-1. In Utah, 29-6-2. That's the Jaden Hardy and Josh Green game, which was really, really impressive. Shows you that Jaden Hardy has a little bit of juice to him as well. I'm not gonna lie to you. I am very intrigued by the Mavericks young guys when it comes to Josh Green and Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy just clearly has a lot of juice to him, and I think playing with a guy like Kyrie will actually help Hardy a ton. It'll help Hardy a ton because learning the kind of ancillary skills, the movement, the fluidity stuff that Kyrie has at this young of an age for Hardy, going to be essential going down the road. So that's going to be interesting to see how that kind of looks in the next couple months. Josh Green, though, is the guy I'm most interested to see. I think he's like the X factor here for the Mavericks. I don't know if you necessarily would agree with that, but I think like just obviously him as this wing defender for them and what he can do defensively in terms of guarding your best player and whatnot, and maybe that kind of proves to be true over these next couple of months and into the playoffs. But I think the offensive side of things, the athleticism that he shows, his ability to attack a closeout, get to the rim, make a decision whether he's going up for the layup or he's kind of kicking it out. He in that Sacramento game, he had a couple of these nice wraparound passes, and I'm like, man, I had no idea Josh Green had this type of vision. Yeah. I was really surprised.
Most people do not know that he has that in his game, and so the way that they're guarding the offense, it's like all of a sudden, oh my God, he just made like a Luka-like read where he's thinking 3 steps ahead and he finds the wide open shooter. And there are absolutely times where he gets stuck, and we saw it more so early on in previous years, but he would drive and get stuck because maybe a lack of confidence, maybe just a bad read. But as time goes on, we're seeing less and less bad reads. We're seeing less and less him getting stuck. Again, still happens from time to time, but he has become a very, very key part to what they're doing, especially when you don't have Dorian Finney-Smith. Before, it was very much Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock. Those are your defensive guys. Those are going to tag team kind of the two biggest opposing offensive threats. But now you've got Reggie Bullock and Josh Green, and even though they give up a little bit of size, you're getting Maxey back soon. So I'm really interested to see how those three at least try to hold it down for Dallas enough to where they can get out and maximize on the fluidity, like you mentioned, that Kyrie and Luka sort of will have and will kind of balance out in terms of just continuing to grow the offense and have it evolve, really.
Yeah, I'm going to be tuning into a lot of Mavericks games down the stretch because it's going to be fascinating to me to see how that unfolds, the dynamic between those two guys, and then how it kind of impacts the Christian Woods, the Maxi Cleavers, the Josh Greens of it all, because it's interesting. It's cool when you throw a dynamo, kind of like just like a random guy into a lineup, how it kind of works. And I'm really interested to see how I don't know if this will end up being the closing lineup. You probably know better than me, but like fully healthy would be Christian Wood, Maxi Kleber, Josh Green, Kyrie, and Luka.
Yeah,
am I kind of forgetting someone in this situation? Yeah.
No, I mean Reggie could be, depending on the like to me it's gonna be that five. But you're either going to have Reggie or Maxi in there. It's going to be one of those two for defense, just depending on who you're playing. But to me, that is the closing lineup.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Mavericks look good. It's going to be interesting. They're another team that has an easy schedule, by the way. They have the fourth easiest schedule in the NBA. The second or third easiest schedule in the entire West. So they have a chance to pick up some wins here. Obviously, the loss and the win, the kind of like splitting the home and home type of thing against the Kings, that's going to be a deciding factor moving forward, because that's who everybody is chasing in the Western Conference. Everybody is kind of looking at the Kings and looking at them like chop liver because they don't have that top end talent, and everybody's like, oh, they got there. And maybe the Kings start feeling that a little bit too. I don't know if that ends up happening, but maybe the Kings have this feeling of like, oh my God, everybody is chasing after us. Everybody wants that third seed because they think that we're not deserving of that third seed. But the Kings have been awesome.
They have.
Can't hate it. Can't knock on it. So the other team I wanted to talk about that looked different, looked cool, was the New Look Lakers.
Oh, yeah.
New Look Lakers. Listen, I think there was a lot of differences in the way they looked in that Warriors-Lakers game. Now, granted, LeBron James didn't play. Mm-hmm. He's dealing with a foot injury or an ankle injury. I don't know. Every other day it's kind of reported differently. And we'll see how that progresses. Honestly, that's probably the biggest X factor to see how many wins they can get and if they can actually climb into the play-in. But outside of him, I think Rob Pelinka did a hell of a job assembling this roster. I did not know. We touched on it when we broke down the trade for Rui. And we said, like, hey, it's interesting how he's breaking up these assets into multiple trades.
Yeah.
And what he did here with the Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and D'Angelo Russell deal, he only sent one first-round pick, acquired 3 rotation players, guys who in their first game, other than Malik Beasley, who didn't shoot the ball well, it's just going to be, for him, it's going to be shoot or miss. Like it's either he hits his shots that night or he doesn't hit. Yeah. But other way, did you have any kind of like take? Like, did you notice anything from that Lakers game? Did it feel different for you compared to any other Lakers games that you've watched?
Yeah, it definitely felt different, at least to me. I will say it's hard for me to take a whole, and this might just be my Lakers skepticism. I'm fully able to admit that, but it's needed. Yeah. When you don't have LeBron James, it's hard for me to take a whole lot away from the Rui performance or the fact that Dennis Schroeder goes off for 26. But when you've got Jared Vanderbilt filling the stat sheet, also scoring the ball, D'Lo kind of filling the stat sheet a little bit, filling the gaps of where they needed the scoring, they needed the facilitation, and then again you have Rui putting up points, kind of I don't want to say like living up to the expectation that they had for him, because personally I guess I don't quite know what that was, but when you see him playing 30 plus minutes a game, putting up 16 points, like you said, I think Rob Pelinka did a hell of a job. I'm still scratching my head on how only one first round pick went out and all these guys came in. So I think the New Look Lakers are going to be really intriguing. I 100% agree that LeBron is the X factor. I mean, LeBron is LeBron. The dude is going to play at all costs if he can. I fully believe that. But I do have a lot of concern about a foot injury, because when you're a little bit older, sometimes the feet and the knees, to me, those can get real real tricky real quick. So I hope for his sake that it's all good. Again, I'm also confused on the reporting because there seem to be so many things out there, but I'm really intrigued at what this group looks like at full strength, because I think they, like we said, they got guys, a lot of different kinds of guys, and to me, they're versatile. Rui and Jared Vanderbilt make them versatile. So I'm really, really intrigued by what that looks like at full strength.
Now, I will say, obviously, there was no Steph Curry. And the
Also
Warriors, they played a game without their main guy. Poole had his, the guys who you would think contributed. They did their thing. In a pre all these trades, before Russell and Vanderbilt and Beasley and walked into this team, I do not think the Lakers win this game. With the roster that they had before this, they would not have won this game. It doesn't matter if Steph Curry was out. It doesn't matter if LeBron James was out. The fact that LeBron was out and they ended up pulling out this win, despite Steph not being there, it doesn't matter. That team would have lost. 110%, that team would have lost the game. This team didn't. And it was because they had contributions from Vanderbilt, who I think, like I mentioned kind of at the top of the pod, is this utility knife guy. He can do a bunch of different things. He can pass for you a little bit. He can defend. He can rebound. He can block. He does a little bit of everything. And I think he has to start. There is no question.
Yeah.
Now, the fit between Anthony Davis and Jared Vanderbilt is kind of wonky. It definitely raises questions offensively for okay, if Vanderbilt is in the dunker spot, then how are you going to start running those clear, weak side pick and rolls that they run, or the clear side pick and rolls that they run with LeBron and AD, and if the lob threat, Vanderbilt's guy is going to be right there, he can help. So I don't know. I have no idea. They're going to have to work it out positionally and see how they can put Vando somewhere that he would be useful, where AD isn't on the court. Right. We'll see what happens. I think Russell, D'Lo, having another playmaker besides Schroeder makes a lot of sense. I don't think both of those guys should start, however. I imagine when LeBron comes back, he probably takes one of those spots. And I would say, in this game, Troy Brown Jr. started. I think Jared Vanderbilt should start. So it would be, AD, Braun, Rui, Vando, Russell. Now, I don't know how much that hurts you spacing-wise and whatnot, but you can get funky with your lineups. And I will say, I think the biggest question going forward with the Lakers will be how Darvin Ham incorporates these guys, how he kind of moves these pieces. And from what I see on Lakers Twitter, there is some skepticism about how rigid or I guess the lack of fluidity Darvin Ham has in making adjustments and kind of tweaking things on the fly. That's definitely going to be a question going forward, because it seems like when something is set in stone that way, for Ham, it's kind of set in stone. It's hey, this is the lineups we're going for. These are the starting lineups. These are the guys who come in at this time, this time, this time. I understand that. That's kind of something that Coach Bud, a guy who Darvin Ham obviously came up under, is known for as well. But I do think when you're incorporating so many new pieces into a team, you need to have a little bit more fluidity. You need to be able to try things out.
Yeah.
I think Jared Vanderbilt being in the starting lineup is one of those things.
Yeah.
That's it for the new look Los Angeles Lakers. I will say there's another team, and this isn't a team that I didn't expect for us to have a conversation on just yet. We're going to, by the way, folks, for everybody who is listening right now, we are going to end up talking about all these teams and breaking down all their plays with actual beat writers and reporters that cover those teams. That is coming in the next month. We're going to be talking to Suns beat writers, Nets beat writers, Mavericks, whatnot, right? They're going to be coming on the show. Really excited for you guys to listen to those conversations as well. When it comes to the Nets, though, they don't look that bad, Lauren. They do not look that bad. I think, Mikal Bridges, the on-ball stuff that he has learned in Phoenix, and like I said, with the motion offense and the egalitarian kind of, hey, your turn, my turn stuff that they do in Phoenix has really helped him develop on-ball. He had 23 in his first game in against Philly, and the Nets lost by 3, but I think he looked really, really good in that I'm a primary option role. Yeah. And their defense looked even better. I think the combination of DFS, Cam Johnson, Bridges, and then you can throw in a Royce O'Neal. Ben Simmons whenever he's up and ready to play, like Nick Claxton, obviously. There's a lot of switchability. There's a lot of potential defensively. And I think this team can be really, really good on the defensive end. Any observations from Brooklyn? Do you think there's anything that kind of took you by surprise or anything like that?
Took me by surprise. I guess probably the Mikal Bridges kind of potentially taking this step forward and showing that he can be that number one option. It was one of those things that when the trade happened, it was clear that he was the best asset in that trade. But I was wondering what that was going to look like, how quickly he could, or even if he would potentially take that step forward of being beyond this elite 3-and-D guy. And it looks like we're seeing the kind of flashes of that being the possibility, especially when you're surrounded with guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Nick Claxton, like you mentioned, the defensive versatility of those guys. So I'm really interested to see how this does work out for Mikal Bridges. And then you mentioned Cam Johnson as another guy who we've seen the development so far, but he still looks like he has room to grow and contribute now. So I like this blend of youth and kind of veteran leadership that they've got. To me, this is not at all what we saw with the Utah Jazz in terms of blowing it up, getting Lauri Markkanen, getting Walker Kessler, and kind of having these two intriguing young guys that are their key pieces. To me, this is completely different. These are guys that you've got a guy in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. You've got a guy in Cam Thomas who's exploded at different points in the season, and I think is only going to continue to develop. And then you've got all these other guys that you just traded for who are, again, can contribute now and also have room to grow. So I think that they're going to be I think that they're kind of feisty. I do. And so I'm intrigued by it because another factor with the Nets' identity is, to me, all of these guys have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. All of these guys play hard. And to me, that's what Josiah has been wanting this whole time. So I like it. I think it's intriguing. And as I'm saying that, I'm recognizing that some people might be like, well, Ben Simmons, how can you say that with Ben Simmons? But I think the overall identity of the Nets, they play hard, they're a little feisty, and I like the group. I'm intrigued to see how they continue to mesh together and grow together, because I think that there's potential for sure.
Lauren, this is our last pod before we talk during All-Star Weekend. So I guess anything you're looking forward to in the All-Star game, in the All-Star Weekend stuff? Anything you're excited for?
Oh, man. Oh, God. I'm always excited for the All-Star game. It's always interesting. I guess I'm excited for the memes that are going to come from the Salt Lake, Utah graphic, because
sure?
There are going to be some. But
that was horrible merchandising if it's real. Horrible.
I believe it's real. Looked real. So, good God, I don't even know. But it's hard. It's hard to say that I'm super excited for the dunk contest or the 3-point contest, because I just think it needs a revamp, which is a conversation that has been had by many people many times. But there are, I guess, certain things that I'm excited about for the dunk contest, like the fact that Mac McClung is the first G League player to be in there. I'm excited for him about that. Am I going to watch the dunk contest? Honestly, I might just watch the recap. And to me, that speaks to the quality of All-Star Weekend and how it has changed over time.
True.
So that's just that's kind of where I'm at with All-Star Weekend. But as far as to me, it's always just the game. I'm interested in the highlights. I'm interested in the little conversations that happen. That's what I look forward to the most. But it is funny to see how over the years the All-Star Weekend and All-Star Game and all the events have changed and have sort of lost overall interest,
some of the
at
luster.
least with me.
Yeah.
Personally. What about you?
I get it. I'm excited for the All-Star game as well. I think the coolest aspect is them doing the draft live before the game, right after. So we don't know who the teams are. Yeah. And obviously they're going to be drafting them live on TV. So that'll always create a ton of drama and controversy and memes and whatnot. So I'm excited for that. I will say I agree with you on the dunk contest. I think we've reached the capabilities of human beings at this point when it comes to dunks. We've explored it all. Unless somehow someone gains a bionic arm or we somehow learn how to jump 10 feet higher than people usually jump, we've reached the 99 percentile of dunking We've seen almost every single thing. And look, yes, there's always ways to reimagine things. There's always cool ways to do it. There's always flair. There's personality. I think that's part of the dunk contest aspect of things as well. But you're right. For the most part, we've seen 99% of the dunks that they do, and it loses the luster. So we'll see what happens. We'll be, ladies and gentlemen, SDPN right here. We will be in Utah, in Salt Lake City. Never been, by the way. So if any Jazz fans are listening, holla at your boy. Send me a DM. Let me know if there's anything to do in Salt Lake City. I'm sure there's stuff to do, especially during the All-Star weekend. But we will have a lot of fun. We'll be shooting content and doing things. And folks, tap in to the Objective Basketball Podcast, because we're going to be doing podcasts continuously. We're here. We're rocking. We're here to remind y'all, like Rihanna reminded y'all at the Super Bowl halftime show. Lauren, any final words?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited for the All-Star weekend. We'll see what we get from it, because like you said, there's going to be some drama. You can always count on the NBA for some drama. Absolutely.
Should be fun. We'll see you guys later. Thank you for joining us here on the Objective Basketball Podcast. Do the little subscribing, the rating, and all that stuff on your respective streaming networks. We will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Follow hosts at Just S Baraheni on all socials and at the Lauren Gunn on Twitter. The Objective Basketball Podcast, delivering the NBA to you like no other.